The ruling class wants more and more power and more your liberty. They want more and more control to push their ideology. But they're the ones who failed us. They're the ones who failed in Texas. Where was the armed guard? There should be an armed policeman in every school, at least one. Where was he? Well, there wasn't one. What about the lock on the door? It wasn't the teacher's fault. The lock didn't work. Well, what about the police chief or the head of the school system police? Made the most outrageous decision you can imagine, especially since Parkland. So you could have more background checks, you could be banning people, you can do all these things. If the ruling class is not going to enforce existing laws and common sense policies, no law is going to change a damn thing. And I'll say this over and over and over again if I have to. No law is going to change a damn thing. A lot of screw-ups. And then, of course, there's big tech. Big tech is so busy trying to trounce conservatives that when it has potential mass murderers on its platforms saying that they plan to murder people, they don't act. Well, this guy in Texas, despite what everybody's saying, he was on the internet talking about what he was planning to do a half hour later. And the guy in Buffalo, he talked about what he was going to do long before he did it. The guy on the subway who shot up the subway and luckily nobody died, he was on the internet talking about what he wanted to do. He was very excited about his weapons. He took pictures of himself and posted them. He was a domestic terrorist of sorts, the things he was saying. And I could go on and on and on. So the failure of the ruling class means it's your fault. It's the fault of the weapons. You're going to lose more liberty, and they're going to gain more power. Why would they stop with the AR-15 when most murders occur with handguns? 70% or so of the murders that occur in this country are with handguns. And the vast, overwhelming majority of them do not occur in schools. They occur in our neighborhoods. And a majority of those murders are black-on-black murders. Young black men killing young black men. And I guarantee you a more extensive background check isn't going to fix a damn thing. Well, it can't hurt, people say. We need to do things that can help, not can't hurt, that can help. But we're not allowed to have that discussion in this country, and I will continue to raise it nonetheless. So here we have Matt McConaughey, who gives this speech, and then on CNN tonight, we have a mud wrestling match between Jonah Goldberg and Ana Navarro. And it entertained us enough in that respect that we thought we'd play it. Go.
Uvalde, Texas is where I was born. It's where my mom taught kindergarten less than a mile from Robb Elementary. Uvalde is where I learned to master a Daisy BB gun. That took 2 years before I graduated to a .410 shotgun. Uvalde is where I was taught to revere the power and the capability of the tool that we call a gun. Uvalde is where I learned responsible gun ownership. We need responsible gun ownership. Responsible gun ownership. We need background checks. We need to raise the minimum age to purchase an AR-15 rifle to 21. We need a waiting period for those rifles. We need red flag laws and consequences for those who abuse them. These are reasonable, practical, tactical regulations to our nation, states, communities, schools, and homes. Responsible gun owners are fed up with the Second Amendment being abused and hijacked by some deranged individuals. These regulations are not a step back. They're a step forward for a civil society and the Second Amendment. Look, this should be a nonpartisan issue. This should not be a partisan issue. There is not a Democratic or Republican value in one single act of these shooters. It's not. But people in power have failed to act. So we're asking you. And I'm asking you, will you please ask yourselves, can both sides rise above? Can both sides see beyond the political problem at hand and admit that we have a life preservation problem on our hands.
A powerful plea for action on guns at the White House today from actor Matthew McConaughey. We've been playing a lot of the sound this hour really because it's resonating with so many people. And I want to bring back our panel who were nodding along and reacting to as we're all listening to it. You had some really visceral reactions and really strong ones about what you were hearing. You pushed back a little bit.
Yeah, so look, I think I agree with everything that he said. And I share the moral outrage entirely. And I share the moral outrage with everybody on this panel about how horrific and just morally repugnant these slaughters are. But when I listen to you guys talking about how you're scared for your own kids, and I have a daughter, I get being scared. If we're going to start telling people that they should be scared about this is going to happen to them, we should at least put some of this in perspective. There are about 54 million kids in Americans who go to K through 12 in America. In the last 29 years, 170 kids have been killed in school shootings.
But how does that compare to, like, if my kid goes to school in Great Britain or Canada? I mean, you see some parents are like, should we leave?
One school shooting, look,
it's too many.
For me, my approach is the exact same way it was about terrorism. The number of people killed on 9/11.
See, here's the problem. What about Great Britain? A dying former empire. What about Great Britain? Why can't we be like them? How many people have been saved because Americans have guns in this country? Where are the statistics on that? How many parents have saved their children from people breaking into their homes because they have a right to bear arms? How many people have been saved? They don't put that piece of the equation into any of these discussions. It's just like when we had this virus going on. Oh, you saw the people died. The people died from what exactly? It doesn't matter. They died. It's Trump's fault. They died. And that is the problem. Go ahead.
You know, you could say, well, more people die in car accidents every year. I don't care. It's unacceptable. The moral outrage is entirely valid and justified. But if we're going to be telling people, you can't switch lanes. You're absolutely right to be outraged about the crime. But if we're going to tell people they should be terrified about their kids being dropped off at school, we should remind them that their kids are more in danger on the drive to school, statistically, than they are at the...
Time to drown them out. Drown them out. Go.
Jonah, we can't do this. No, but we can't.
No, but listen,
A child's life cannot be a statistic, right? You can't tell the parents of Joaquin Oliver of Parkland. You can't tell Fred Gutenberg.
Yeah, but that's
you
moral
can't
bullying.
tell my cousins.
I'm making a basic point to say that you shouldn't tell people that they should be terrified.
If it were your child, it would not be a statistic. It would be a tragedy that you would never, ever
That's moral
recover
bullying.
from.
Yeah,
Why is it more?
You see, ladies and gentlemen, if it was your child, it wouldn't be a statistic. Does Ana Navarro get on that show ever and talk about every weekend how many people are slaughtered in Democrat cities? What are we going to do about it? Where they have the most gun control? No, she doesn't. She supports the Democrats. She's a Republican, like so many are on CNN and MSNBC. And so if it was your child, well, of course it was your child, because it touches you directly. But that doesn't give them the moral high ground, their self-righteousness and so forth. We're all trying to figure out how to protect these kids in the schools. How come we have these cafe standards? Our cars are much lighter. Used to have a steel cage. There used to be a lot of steel in your car. But in order to meet these cafe standards require there to be a lot of aluminum, a lot of rubber, a lot of plastic. They're not nearly as safe as they used to be. People forget cafe standards were put in place shortly after the OPEC boycott of the United States, where they were cutting off our oil. Remember that? Well, most of you don't, but it was a little over half a century ago. The cafe standards were put in place, the theory was, so people would use less fuel. Not because of the environment, but because of national security. And now it's turned into a so-called environmental issue, a climate change issue. How many people die on the roads because of the cafe standards? This is a legitimate point. It's also in Liberty and Tyranny, I wrote 13 or so years ago. Tens of thousands. Tens of thousands. That's Goldberg's point, but they're trying to shout him down because they know he makes sense. Go.
Wait,
You're making it
let me
sound
ask
as
you.
if I don't have compassion for these
You
people.
are
Of course
talking
I do.
about it as if it's a statistic and probabilities that we should
I'm saying
accept
you shouldn't
and live
tell
with.
you shouldn't tell the audience that this is the thing that they should be so terrified with, paralyzed with fear about their own kids, when their kids are more likely to die from a lot of other things.
hold on,
So they're more likely
Jonah,
to
but
die of going to school. And you know what happened because of that? What happened because of that is that we have car seat laws that passed, that we have seatbelt.
Why are there so many stupid people on TV? That's my question.
For more, sign up for LevinTV.